One thing you'll notice by glancing through my channel is that I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy X in particular, at least to me, is
the cream of the crop.
I'm making this video because I have a problem, not with Final Fantasy X itself, but with the fans. Okay, not all the fans, just the people on the wrong side of the pronunciation argument for the main character's name. See this guy? How do you think his name's pronounced? I'll just tell you, it's Tidus. Did you think it'd be Tidus just by looking at it? Be honest. I won't lie, Tidus looks like it could fit on paper, but a lot of the people in Camp Tidus have a whole mental obstacle course set up as for why their pronunciation is the right one, and I want to dissect that. If you didn't know how it was pronounced and want to learn how the Japanese pronounce the letter I, then this video is for you. If you're in Camp Tidus and want to learn why you're wrong, this video is also for you. Let's begin, shall we? See this guy? His name is based off the Okinawan word for sun. Let's listen to that.
Kira.
If it wasn't obvious from his celestial crest, sigil, and shirt color, this sun inspiration is a central part to his character. He's also the son of Jacked. I see what you did there, Nojima, you sly dog. The most popular theory I see is it's Tidus because he's associated with the water and the tide. It's funny to keep seeing that excuse. Funny, and a little sad. For those who aren't aware, the sun has nothing to do with the tide. You know what does have something to do with the tide? The moon. You know whose name is Japanese for moon? Not Yuna, but her name is close. Yuna's name is the Okinawan word for night because she's supposed to mirror Tidus, and I guess naming her Muna would have been too on the nose. Her name's also Okinawan for sea hibiscus, which you can see on her dress as well as in her special dress sphere from Final Fantasy X too. So that's that then, right? We got the root of the name, class is dismissed, right? Like, can I leave? No. Unfortunately, we can't, because the waters have been muddied a little bit by an unexpected character. James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Johnny Test, said that when he was brought on to voice the game, he was told by the producers that an English voice actor working in Japan pronounced it Tidus, and that's how the name stuck.
The producers told me that what happened was that they made a trailer for the game after it was, being made in Japanese, and they knew they were going to do an American version, and so they hired an American narrator in Japan to narrate the trailer. And the narrator said Tidus. He pronounced it
a young
Tidus.
Adventurer named
and
Tidus.
Pretty much everybody there, not really speaking much English and such, heard him say it, assumed, okay, that must be the proper way to pronounce it in English, and they let it go and they put it out there and they said, well, that's how it was pronounced in the trailer, so that is the way you pronounce his name. So it is Tidus because some voice actor somewhere in Japan decided to pronounce it Tidus instead of Tidus.
I want to believe Jat here, but I feel like an American narrator working in Japan who is voicing a Japanese character whose name is based off of a Japanese word would most likely defer to the Japanese pronunciation. I feel like this is a voice acting fairy tale to add a little extra salt and pepper to the character itself, to give the voice actor, a cool story to tell people on YouTube, I guess like 15 years after the game comes out. I'm not doubting that this is what they told James, but I feel like the story's a little spicier than what's letting on. In most cases, the simplest solution is the correct one, and I feel like that's where this pronunciation fits in. Another popular misconception is that this art piece by Yoshitaka Amano, titled Water Warrior, lends credence to the whole tide name theory because it's about Tidus and he's the water guy and, the tide is a part of the water and blah blah blah. The fact that he has a water sword and plays water soccer are not contributing factors to his name, they're just parts of his character. If this stuff mattered, why isn't Waka's name related to balls, Lulu's name related to milk, or Cloud's name related to being a schizo? Now that we've knocked that out, let's talk about the Japanese language. See this girl? Do you know her name? For the uninitiated, it's Tifa.
Tifa! Tifa. Tifa.
Now let me just break this up a bit. Now pay attention here. What if I do this? The letter I does some crazy stuff in Japanese, depending on where it's located. I'll give you guys some examples here. The letter I by itself makes a long E sound in Japan. We can see this in characters like Ichigo, Midoriya, Sanji, Killua, Simone. You get the idea. This young lady has not one, but two unique I sounds in her name. The AI pairing makes a long I sound with Kai. We'll see this later on in Final Fantasy with the character Caius, but we also see it in like Dragon Ball with King Kai as the obvious one, and then the Raikage for Naruto, and Aizawa in My Hero over there. But circling back to Final Fantasy X, we see the long E sound a lot in the game. The Mihen High Road, Isaru, Anima, Macalania, Maester Keenock, the list goes on. And now you may be thinking, what about Maester Micah? His name has the long I sound. While that may be true, his name seems to be an exception to the rule and is pronounced Micah in both English and Japanese.
Maester Micah himself told me.
On the topic of inconsistent pronunciations, I guess it's time to bring up Kingdom Hearts 2. One popular misconception is that the pronunciation we got from Selphie in Kingdom Hearts 2 is the correct one,
Tidus and Waka are all wrapped up in their ballgame.
even though we got the correct pronunciation a few years earlier with Kingdom Hearts 1.
Me and Tidus, we are gonna do a little exploring today.
I've legitimately seen people argue that the voice actress for Selphie was the only person to pronounce this name right, and everyone else just kept getting it wrong, and Square didn't bother to say anything for some reason. Chances are that since Selphie only had one or two lines in all of Kingdom Hearts 2, they just had her knock the lines out and be done with it. Tidus doesn't even appear in the game, so focusing too much on an off-screen character may have been more than they were willing to do. Regardless, Selphie says it correctly in Japanese.
ティーダとワッカはボール遊びに夢中でな、一緒に行ってくれへんねん。
After Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2, we didn't get much until Dissidia came out, and then his official pronunciation was voiced for all to hear. That should have been the end of it, right? Wrong.
I'm still gonna call him Tidus. It's what I called him that, and it's going to be too much of a hassle to break that habit. Plus everyone will know who I'm talking about anyway, and on message forums
Not to say that
pronunciation
it's
doesn't
canon
matter.
since it is KH, but in Kingdom Hearts Waka pronounced Tidus too, although I'm pretty sure that somewhere else KH
told him that. Doesn't make it
it's
sound
back
any
to
less
Tidus.
because Tidus sounds
Whatever
so
it is,
horrible.
I'll still pronounce his name
I have
Tidus
always
because I think
called
it
him
sounds
Tidus,
better.
and I will continue to do
I've always
so.
known
It
it
was
that is
Tidus,
Dissidia's story.
but I say Tidus cause it sounds better.
Apparently, the name being fully voiced didn't matter, and people were doubling down on Tidus because Tidus sounds stupid. Apparently, Waka doesn't sound stupid, Seymour doesn't sound or look stupid, the Shoepuff doesn't sound stupid, the Albed's made-up gibberish language doesn't sound stupid, but Tidus does?
Hello to Sadwi.
Helly do sad we to you too.
Like, I'll be the first to admit that there's some goofy stuff in these games, but I feel like Tidus isn't one of them. What I think the cause is these hardcore superfans of Final Fantasy X who 20 years ago, they played the game, they fell in love, and they just called him Tidus because that's the name that they read in their mind. And then once they see the water stuff, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But then once the pronunciation comes out, rather than adapting and calling him the proper name, they're just doubling down on the wrong one because they're such hardcore fans and they love the character so much that they just want to keep calling him the wrong name because that's just how they show love, I guess. In any case, at least for me, Dissidia was the final nail in the coffin for Tidus, and whether people want to accept it or not, it was the correct pronunciation. But don't just take my word for it, let's listen to Dissidia itself.
Tidus.
Tidus? 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 Tidus.
Tidus. Tidus. Tidus. Tidus. Tidus.
But wait, what if those crack-smoking Kingdom Hearts fans were right? What if they said it wrong in the English dub, and just nobody bothered to freaking correct them or anything? It happens. Well, let's see what Japan has to say about it. Now you may be asking, does any of this matter? Like, at all? No, I guess not. Whatever. I'll still to this day see arguments pop up over the pronunciation, and I feel like there hasn't really been a line drawn in the sand. Both James Arnold Taylor and Final Fantasy Union at the end of their videos on the subject will both tell you that whatever you want to call him at the end of the day is the correct one because it's your experience, but that's not correct. If you've been presented with the facts and you're doubling down on the wrong pronunciation, then you're just outright wrong, and I think somebody needs to say it.